Hello. Today we are going to continue looking at the constitutional law for paralegal counselors. Today we want to look at the principles of the Constitution. A constitution, as we know, that it is the supreme law, and it has to be made with care. Last time we talked about how difficult it has been to develop a constitution that is people-centered, and also the constitution that can stand the test of time, and also to achieve democracy in a constitutional making process. Today I want us to look at the principles of constitution. Because it depends upon reaching an inclusive and relatively enduring set of higher laws through which ordinary political disputes will be channeled. Constitution building can be seen as a process that differs in both purpose and nature from ordinary lawmaking. So, when you look at the Constitution, it must be taken with care, and it has to cover all those issues that may arise in the governance of the nation. And beside that, it also has to cover the people, and it has to include everyone. So when writing the Constitution, there are certain things that are supposed to be considered. The question should be, is this constitution going to stand the test of time? Does this constitution include everyone? So constitutional building requires both a broader consensus and a greater willingness to set aside immediate self-interest for the sake of enduring public values. The biggest challenge that we have had in the constitutional making, especially in the constitutional review commissioners that we have had in Zambia, is that the things that the people have brought in the constitution, or what people have desired to be in the constitution, you find that they have not been considered. There are a lot of articles that were proposed in the Constitution, and when it came to enactment of the Constitution by the Parliament, you will discover that most of the things that were proposed on the Constitutional Review Commissioner, they were not included in the Constitution that was desired by the people of Zambia. Now, when we look at the constitutional building process, the constitution has to be made in such a way that it has to be inclusive. It has to be it has to stand the test of time. It should not just cater for the current leadership or the current political leadership. So Ackman in his book in 1993, he insisted that the constitution building both a broader consensus and greater willingness to set aside immediate self-interest for the sake of enduring values. This sometimes takes place in a so-called constitutional moment, a particular time when a country, usually upon achieving independence or after the collapse of the failed undemocratic regime, decides to reconstitute itself along inclusive lines. So the constitution mostly comes in when there is a change of government, and whereby there is a lot of questions about the constitution, because sometimes when the constitution is made, it is made in the context of that kind of government that is there. So now the constitutional principle, or the constitutional making principle, must be that the people should be able to make the constitution that will stand the test of time. So the the constitutional principle, it has got many theories and many arguments on how the constitution should be made. Because when you look at the constitutional making process, there are theories that where they say the constitution has to be adopted just exactly as it is proposed by the people. But other scholars argue that the constitution has to be adopted by the parliament, which means that the people that are in the parliament, they are the ones that has been elected by the people to represent them. So they argue that laws embodied in the constitution bind elected representatives to bargains made at the time of constitutional founding, while excluding the viewpoints from political discourse. Now, like in Zambia, in the adoption of the constitution, the parliament is the one that makes the alteration of the constitution, and it is the one that adopts the constitution. So in doing that, that's why like when you are doing the Constitutional Review Act or commission, there must be specific rules that has to be given on the adoption of the Constitution and on the enactment of the Constitution. There are two things whereby there is adoption and enactment. Adoption, it is where the Constitution is adopted by the parliament to be well written, and enactment, it's where again the parliament decides and adopts. When they adopt, then the president signs on the constitution, then it means that it is enacted. Now, when you look at the powers that has been given by the parliaments to adopt the constitution, there are debates where they say that the parliament may alter the constitution, and others they say no, the parliament are the representatives of the people, so they know the best what is required for the people. Now, since these laws are typically upheld by judges and specialists rather than by elected representatives of the people, the effect is to create tension between a pre-commitment of constitutionalism and principle of democracy. Now, the other principle, the other challenge about the Constitution is that the Constitution is interpreted by the judges, the people that have been schooled about the principles of laws. Now, the question may come: what is our law as the paralegal counselors when it comes to the upholding the principle of constitutional making? Now, I want us to know that in many times in Zambia and in other countries, we find that people, they are not aware of what is contained in the constitution, and there are laws in the constitution making process and other things that pertains to constitution. So it is our mandate as the legal practitioners or as paralegal counselors to be able to educate the communities on the constitution, so that people, number one, people may know what a constitution is and the rights and the powers that they have been given as citizens. Now, when it comes to the constitutional review, so it is our mandate as the paralegal counselors to educate the community on how the constitution should be made and how people should bring in the issues on to create a democratic and all-inclusive constitution. Now, in principle and practical terms, a constitution must be seen as a collective self-binding by which participants in the political system bind themselves to fundamental laws, so that incumbent holders of government office cannot dominate or manipulate the state. So the reason, the principle of the constitution is that the constitution is made and so that the people that are in the government cannot manipulate their powers, or cannot manipulate the people. So the constitution gives them guidelines on how things are supposed to be done, on how they should be able to govern the nation. Adherence to the commitment of the constitution. That's why when they are sowing in the president, he lifts the constitution and say, make an oath to abide and to protect the constitution, and also to work according to the constitution. So that commitment is given to the political leaders, that whatever that is enshrined in the constitution must be defended and must be promoted. So now it is by that's where now the principle of constitution gives the powers, or helps the leaders or the political leaders to abide by the constitutional guidance and by the constitutional powers and the limitation of the powers that has been given to them. Another approach is to regard the constitutional document that emerged from the constitutional bargains achieved during foundation and expression of the sovereign constituent power of the people. So the people are the sovereign power of the constitution. So their voice is heard and their voice is enshrined in the constitution. So the politicians and the political leaders are supposed to abide by the constitution. Now, in the case where the political leaders are not abiding by the constitution, that is where now we need to stand and vote them out. And if it is the parliament, if it is the president, that's why there is what is called impeachment. Although impeachment may seem to have a challenge, but the provision that is there on impeachment of the president, it helps for the president to be conscious that he is bounded by the law. So the principle of the constitution gives powers to the administrators, or the administration of the nation, or the administration of the state. It is the constitution that gives the powers to the president. It is the constitution that gives the powers to the judiciary, and it is the constitution that gives the powers to the parliament. So these arms of government are given the powers by the constitution, and the constitution it is believed, and it has to be made by the people of that particular country. So according to this view, we are saying that the constitution cannot be altered, or is not altered by the people that are in lieu, but they have been given the charge to execute or to enforce the constitution, and to live by the constitution. So the judicial, which is the judicial, the legislative, and also the president, they are constitutionally bound by what they are supposed to do and the decision they make, because the constitution is the supreme law. So every law and every person that is in that country is governed and guided by law, either to protect you or to bind you. Now, when I say to protect you, the constitution gives us the rights as citizens. It also gives the rights to the leaders or the government. But it also binds us as citizens what we are not supposed to do. And it also gives the powers of other legislative or other laws in the country, so that the nation is governed properly. Now let's look at constitutions, corruption, and good citizenship. So corruption is a much broader concept than the mere taking of of bribe or payment. It covers all actions that put private interest above public interest in relation to registration. So, policy and administration. This is a threat to the good governance. When we look at the issue of corruption, it is a challenge, and it has got much to be desired when it comes to the good citizenship and good governance. So the threat of corruption poses to a democratic order has long been well understood. So what we are saying is that the Constitution gives us the democratic powers. Now there must be our commitment as the citizens of Zambia through the voice of the Constitution that there must be the rule of law, and also it has to help us prevent what is called corruption. So, mostly what corruption means, like when we have got where the Constitution gives us the power of the anti-corruption. So it helps that to balance up the public office. When you look at the Corruption Act, there are a lot of things that are enshrined, although it has no much voice and much power when it comes to the enforcement. So that is to say, when rules forget about the common good and concern themselves only with their private gain and profit, politics ceases to be public vocation and becomes a trade. Politics are not a trade. It's a public vocation where people has to give themselves for the sake of people. It requires sacrifice, and it requires the people that are ready to sacrifice for the voters, the people, and be able to deliver what they have promised the voters. But now the challenge is that due to corruption, you'd find that people that are not supposed to be in the government are the ones that are voted out because of corruption. Even though there are guidelines that have been given on how or not bribing when it comes to the voting. So you'd find that the democracy is compromised if the people don't understand their political rights or their rights according to the Constitution. So good citizenship is based on the people knowing the constitutional rights, and also the people understanding what is enshrined in the Constitution. That is when now the people are able to voice out as to become good citizens, and also to be able to know that we are included in the government and in the governance of the nation. I think that is the principle of the Constitution. So for today, I think we are going to end here. Join me next time as we continue to look at the constitutional law. This is your host, Dr. Tulipo Mwenifumbo. May God bless you, and I believe you have enjoyed the lesson.